86-hour gaming marathon collapse. On October 23, 2002, in a crowded internet cafe in Gwangju, South Korea, a 24-year-old man's gaming session ended in tragedy. Kim had been a regular at the establishment, known for his dedication to the medieval fantasy game Mu. What set this particular session apart was its duration, 86 hours of the nearly continuous play. The internet cafe culture in South Korea had exploded in popularity, with thousands of these PC bangs operating around the clock. They offered high-speed internet, comfortable chairs, and an escape into virtual worlds. Kim had arrived on Sunday evening with the intention of playing through the night. That night stretched into days. Surveillance footage later revealed that over the course of the 86 hours, Kim left his seat only for brief bathroom breaks and to smoke cigarettes just outside the entrance. He consumed energy drinks and instant noodles brought by cafe staff. Sleep came only in short bursts, his head occasionally dropping to his chest before he would jerk awake and continue playing. By the third day, witnesses reported that Kim's appearance had deteriorated noticeably. His face was pale and drawn, dark circles had formed under his bloodshot eyes. His hands trembled slightly as he controlled his character on screen. Other patrons noticed his labored breathing but assumed it was just fatigue from his extended session. At approximately 2 p.m. on Wednesday, after nearly 4 days without proper rest, Kim's body began to show signs of extreme distress. His breathing became increasingly shallow. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. He complained briefly of chest pains to a nearby player but continued gaming. 20 minutes later, Kim suddenly slumped forward in his chair. His hands dropped from the keyboard. His head hit the desk with enough force to alert those sitting nearby. Cafe staff rushed over and immediately called emergency services. Paramedics arrived within minutes to find Kim unresponsive. Despite immediate CPR and emergency transport to the nearest hospital, the damage was too severe. Kim's heart, pushed beyond its limits by the combination of sleep deprivation, physical inactivity, dehydration, and constant stress, had simply given out. At 3:47 p.m., doctors pronounced Kim dead from cardiac failure. Medical experts later explained that the continuous stress had triggered a fatal arrhythmia. His heart's electrical system had essentially short-circuited after days of abnormal strain. Fatal blood clot. On May 19, 2011, in Sheffield, United Kingdom, a 20-year-old man collapsed suddenly while waiting for a job interview. Staniforth was known among friends for his passion for gaming, particularly the science fiction game Halo, which had consumed increasing amounts of his time in recent months. His gaming sessions had grown longer and more intense. What began as casual evening play had evolved into 12-hour marathons, often stretching from early evening until dawn. During these sessions, Staniforth would remain almost completely stationary, his legs tucked beneath him on his chair, fingers rapidly working the controller. The human body isn't designed for such prolonged immobility. Inside Staniforth's leg, a silent danger was developing. In the deep veins of his left calf, blood began to stagnate and clot, a condition known medically as deep vein thrombosis. The clot grew larger with each extended gaming session, each hour of compressed vessels and restricted circulation. On the morning of May 19th, Staniforth left his house feeling normal. He had been gaming until 4 o'clock a.m., but felt ready for his upcoming job interview. As he stood at a bus stop near the Job Center Plus office, he suddenly experienced a sharp pain in his chest. Within seconds, breathing became difficult. He felt lightheaded and nauseated. What Staniforth couldn't know was that the clot had dislodged from his leg and traveled through his bloodstream. It had now reached his lungs, blocking the pulmonary artery, a condition called pulmonary embolism. His oxygen levels plummeted immediately. His heart began to race, trying desperately to compensate. Witnesses saw him clutch his chest and collapse to the pavement. Emergency services were called, and paramedics arrived within minutes. They found Staniforth unresponsive, his lips blue, his pulse weak and erratic. Despite immediate CPR and emergency transport to the hospital, the damage was catastrophic and irreversible. Medical staff later explained to his family that the clot had completely blocked blood flow to his lungs. His heart, suddenly forced to pump against an immovable obstruction, had been strained beyond its capacity. Despite the doctor's desperate efforts, Chris Staniforth was pronounced dead at 11:47 a.m., a victim of what would later be termed e-thrombosis, a blood clot directly linked to his extended periods of immobility during gaming. 3-day gaming binge. On January 1st, 2015, as the world celebrated the arrival of a new year, a 38-year-old man sat alone in an internet cafe in New Taipei City. The establishment was open 24 hours, catering to those seeking escape in digital worlds regardless of time. For 5 consecutive days, Chu had been fixed to his seat, eyes locked on the screen before him. The cafe was typical of those found across Taiwan. Rows of computers separated by dividers, offering a semblance of privacy in a public space. Staff members had grown accustomed to Chu's presence. He had become a fixture, barely leaving his station for nearly 120 continuous hours. Security footage later reviewed showed he stood only for brief bathroom breaks. Throughout his 5-day session, Chu consumed little more than instant noodles and energy drinks brought by cafe employees. Sleep came only in short bursts, his head occasionally dropping to his chest before jerking awake to continue playing. Witnesses reported he spoke to no one, communicating only through in-game chat with strangers online. By the 5th day, Chu's appearance had deteriorated noticeably. His eyes were sunken and red from strain. His movements had become sluggish and uncoordinated. Several patrons later told police they had noticed his labored breathing, but assumed he was simply tired from his extended session. At approximately 10 o'clock a.m., a cafe attendant approached Chu to check if he wanted another drink. When she received no response, she gently tapped his shoulder. Chu remained motionless, slumped forward in his chair. His hands were still positioned over the keyboard, fingers curled as if ready to continue playing. Emergency services arrived within minutes, but medical personnel immediately recognized the signs. Chu's body was already cool to the touch. His skin had taken on a waxy pallor. The prolonged sitting position had likely caused blood to pool in his lower extremities, triggering a fatal clot. The autopsy confirmed that Chu had suffered a cardiac arrest caused by extreme physical exhaustion. The combination of sleep deprivation, poor nutrition, dehydration, and prolonged immobility had created a perfect storm within his body. His heart had simply stopped. Teen dies during challenge. On August 21, 2020, as social media trends swept across teenage communities nationwide, a girl in Oklahoma City made a fatal decision in her bathroom. Phillips was a typical teenager, active on TikTok, concerned with likes and follows, eager to participate in viral challenges that might boost her online presence. That evening, she discovered videos featuring the Bill Challenge, a dangerous trend encouraging users to consume excessive amounts of the over-the-counter allergy medication to induce hallucinations. The standard dosage for adults is 25 to 50 milligrams. The challenge promoted taking many times that amount. Using Bill purchased from a local pharmacy, Phillips consumed an estimated 12 to 14 tablets, approximately 300 milligrams of diphenhydramine hydrochloride. Within 30 minutes, the first effects began. Her heart rate accelerated dramatically. Her mouth became extremely dry. Her vision blurred as her pupils dilated. These initial symptoms were merely the beginning. As the drug flooded her system, more severe effects took hold. Her body temperature rose dangerously. Her heartbeat became erratic. The hallucinations she sought arrived, but alongside them came confusion and panic. Around 11 p.m., Phillips' breathing grew labored. Her body began to shake with tremors. She attempted to reach her bedroom but collapsed in the hallway. Family members heard the fall and rushed to find her convulsing on the floor, unable to speak coherently. Emergency services were called immediately. Paramedics arrived to find Phillips in full cardiac distress. Her heart rhythm had become dangerously irregular, a condition known as diphenhydramine-induced arrhythmia. They administered emergency treatment on scene and during transport to the hospital. In the emergency room, medical staff worked frantically to stabilize her. The toxic levels of diphenhydramine had caused severe damage to her heart muscle. Despite aggressive intervention, including attempted cardiac resuscitation, the damage was too extensive. At 1:38 a.m., doctors were forced to acknowledge what the monitors already showed. Chloe Marie Phillips was pronounced dead, a victim not just of a drug overdose, but of a social media algorithm that had promoted and amplified a deadly challenge to impressionable teens. Fatal collapse. On August 5, 2005, in the bustling city of Daegu, South Korea, a 28-year-old man sat hunched over a computer in a dimly lit internet cafe. These establishments, known locally as PC bangs, had become cultural institutions where gamers could play for hours, often through the night. Lee had been playing the real-time strategy game Starcraft for nearly 50 hours straight. Starcraft wasn't just a game in South Korea, it was a national obsession, with professional leagues and television broadcasts. Lee wasn't a professional, but his dedication to the game had become all-consuming. He had barely moved from his seat for over 2 days, stopping only for brief bathroom breaks. Witnesses later reported that throughout his marathon session, Lee had consumed almost nothing but cigarettes and the occasional energy drink. Sleep deprivation was visible on his face, bloodshot eyes, pale skin, and increasingly erratic movements as he commanded his virtual troops across the screen. At approximately 3:15 a.m., after clicking furiously through another intense match, Lee's body began to show signs of severe distress. His breathing became labored, sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. Fellow gamers noticed his condition worsening, but no one intervened. Such extended sessions were not uncommon. Suddenly, Lee slumped forward in his chair. At first, nearby players thought he had simply fallen asleep. It wasn't until he slid off his seat onto the floor that others realized something was seriously wrong. Cafe staff called emergency services immediately. When paramedics arrived, they found Lee still conscious, but in critical condition. His pulse was rapid and irregular. His skin had taken on a bluish tint. They rushed him to the nearest hospital, working desperately to stabilize him during the journey. Medical staff later determined that Lee's heart had been pushed to its limits. The combination of exhaustion, dehydration, and stress had triggered fatal heart failure. Despite emergency intervention, his vital organs had been without proper circulation for too long. At 4:23 a.m., Seung-seop Lee was pronounced dead. Collapse during fitness video game. On March 4, 2009, in the quiet coastal village of Hopton-on-Sea, United Kingdom, a 25-year-old man collapsed in his living room while playing a fitness game. Eves had recently returned from an overseas trip and was trying to shake off the lingering effects of jet lag through light exercise on his Nintendo Wii console. The Wii Fit had become popular as a way to combine video gaming with physical activity. Players would mimic sports motions while standing on a balance board, following prompts on their television screen. That evening, Eves had chosen a jogging program designed to simulate running through a virtual park. Just 2 days earlier, Eves had flown back from Thailand, a 12-hour flight that had left him fatigued but otherwise healthy. Friends described him as fit and active with no known health issues. He had mentioned feeling slightly tired but was eager to return to his normal routine after the long journey. At approximately 8:30 p.m., Eves began his virtual jog, running in place on the carpet of his living room. His girlfriend was in another room when she heard a sudden thump. She rushed in to find Eves collapsed on the floor, unconscious and unresponsive. She immediately called emergency services. When paramedics arrived minutes later, they found Eves in cardiac arrest. Despite their immediate efforts to resuscitate him, including defibrillation and CPR, there was no response. His heart had stopped completely. The medical examiner later determined that Eves had died from sudden arrhythmia death syndrome, a condition that causes the heart to develop a fatal rhythm without warning. The physical exertion of the game, combined with his recent long-haul flight, had likely triggered the deadly arrhythmia. SADS often remains undetected until it proves fatal. The electrical system controlling Eve's heartbeat had malfunctioned severely, causing the muscle to quiver uselessly instead of pumping blood. Within seconds, his brain was deprived of oxygen. Within minutes, death was inevitable. What made the tragedy particularly cruel was the context. Eves had been engaging in what was marketed as a healthy activity. The game designed to improve physical fitness had instead become the catalyst for a fatal cardiac event. At 9:11 p.m., despite continued resuscitation attempts, Tim Eves was pronounced dead at the scene. Death by Blackout Challenge. On December 12, 2021, in a suburban home in Chester, Pennsylvania, a girl was found unconscious in her bedroom closet. Anderson had been a bright, sociable child who, like many of her generation, was active on social media platforms despite her young age. That afternoon, she had encountered one of the most dangerous trends circulating online, the Blackout Challenge. The challenge, which had spread rapidly across TikTok and other platforms, encouraged participants to choke themselves until they lost consciousness. The goal was to experience the brief euphoric sensation that comes with oxygen deprivation to the brain. For many children, the dangerous nature of this activity wasn't fully understood. Alone in her bedroom, Anderson had decided to attempt the challenge. She had used a purse strap, hanging it from a clothes rack in her closet. The medical examiner would later determine that she had positioned herself in such a way that her body weight created pressure against her carotid arteries, the vessels that supply blood to the brain. Within seconds of applying pressure, Anderson would have experienced lightheadedness as blood flow to her brain decreased. Unlike many who attempt such challenges with friends present, there was no one to intervene, and she began to lose consciousness. As her oxygen levels plummeted, her brain began to shut down critical functions. At approximately 4:30 p.m., Anderson's mother entered the bedroom to check on her daughter. She discovered the child hanging unconscious in the closet. Immediately, she cut the strap and laid her daughter on the floor, beginning CPR while calling emergency services. Paramedics arrived within minutes to find the mother still attempting resuscitation. First responders took over life-saving efforts and rushed Anderson to Crozer-Chester Medical Center. In the emergency room, doctors found that her brain had been deprived of oxygen for a critical period. Despite aggressive intervention, including mechanical ventilation and medication to reduce brain swelling, the damage was devastating and irreversible. For 5 days, Anderson remained on life support while her family maintained a vigil at her bedside. Physicians performed multiple tests to determine brain activity, each confirming the same grim reality. On December 17th, with her family's consent, life support was withdrawn. Nyla Anderson was pronounced dead at 6:17 p.m., becoming one of at least 15 children who had died attempting this same challenge within a single year. The first Craigslist. On April 14, 2009, room 2010 at the Marriott Copley Place Hotel in Boston became a crime scene that would change how America viewed the internet forever. Jalissa Brisman was a 25-year-old aspiring model and actress from New York City who had recently begun advertising massage services on Craigslist to help pay her bills during the economic recession. That evening, hotel staff received complaints about loud noises coming from the 20th floor. When security arrived at room 2010, they knocked but received no response. Using a master key, they entered to find a horrific scene. Brisman lay on the floor, blood pooling beneath her body. Her wrist showed signs of being bound with plastic zip ties. Her head had suffered severe trauma from being bludgeoned with a hard object. Most lethal were the 3 bullet wounds to her chest, fired at close range. The room showed signs of a violent struggle. Overturned furniture, broken glass, and blood spatter across the walls. Hotel security immediately called police, who sealed off the crime scene. Surveillance cameras had captured images of a tall, clean-cut young man entering the elevator with Brisman earlier that evening. The same man was later seen leaving alone, wearing latex gloves and carrying a gun-shaped bulge in his pocket. Detectives quickly connected this to another attack just 4 days earlier at a different Boston hotel, where a woman advertising escort services on Craigslist had been robbed at gunpoint, but managed to escape when her husband returned to the room. The surveillance footage was released to the public, and tips flooded in. 6 days after Brisman's murder, police arrested Philip Markoff, a 23-year-old Boston University medical student who had no prior criminal record. Investigators were stunned to discover this seemingly ordinary student was living a double life. In Markoff's apartment, police found the murder weapon, zip ties identical to those used on Brisman, and multiple pairs of women's underwear hidden in his mattress, each apparently taken as trophies from victims. The clean-cut medical student, who was engaged to be married, had methodically selected, bound, and executed Jalissa Brisman, creating a new term that would send chills through internet users nationwide: the Craigslist Killer. If you want to see more videos like this, click the video on screen now and make sure to subscribe.